Imagine you're a sailor in the early 1700s. Your job is terrible. You sleep in a cramped, damp ship that smells like sweat, rotten rope, old fish, and regret. Your boss is a merchant captain who treats management style as a fancy term for shouting at people until they bleed. The food is bad, the pay is worse, and if the ship makes a fortune, you get basically nothing except another month of not dying. Then one day, your ship is attacked by pirates. Terrifying, obviously. Cannons, smoke, screaming, men waving cutlasses, the whole nightmare package. But then, after the fighting stops, one pirate leans over and gives you what is essentially a very illegal job offer. Hey, want to join us? Better pay, more voting rights, casual dress code, high risk of hanging. And that's when you realize something strange. Pirates were not just random criminals yelling, "Arr!" and falling into treasure chests. A pirate crew was basically a floating criminal startup, illegal, violent, dangerous, and usually doomed, but still weirdly organized. They had recruitment, leadership elections, profit sharing, workplace rules, supply problems, brand image, employee complaints, competitors, regulators, and a business model that was, to put it gently, not approved by the local chamber of commerce. So, let's say you take the offer. Congratulations. You have just joined Ocean Crime Incorporated. Your first surprise is that the captain is not always an all-powerful king of the ship. On many pirate vessels, the captain was chosen by the crew, not because pirates were noble heroes of democracy, but because if you're running a boat full of armed criminals, you need at least some buy-in from the armed criminals. A merchant captain might rule like a tyrant. A pirate captain had to keep investors happy, and by investors, I mean 50 men with pistols who would absolutely replace him if he got too bossy. The captain's job was mostly wartime CEO. During a chase or battle, he gave orders, made quick decisions, and tried not to turn the ship into floating firewood. But during normal life, he had limits. There was often another important officer, the quartermaster. Think of him as the HR department, chief operating officer, and complaint desk, all in one extremely armed person. He helped divide loot, settle disputes, and represent the crew's interests. Basically, the captain says, "We attack at dawn," and the quartermaster says, "Cool, but first Gary says someone stole his shoes," and also the men want to discuss the rum situation. Then come the company policies. Pirate crews often had written articles, rules that explained how the ship would operate. These could cover things like how loot was divided, what happened if someone stole from the crew, how injuries were compensated, and what behavior could get you punished. Yes, pirates had employee handbooks, extremely violent employee handbooks, and the profit-sharing system was one of the big selling points. On a merchant ship, you might earn a small wage while the owners back home collected the real money. On a pirate ship, the crew usually shared the plunder. The captain got extra. Skilled workers like carpenters or surgeons might get extra, but ordinary crew members got a defined share. It was like equity in a startup, except instead of stock options, you received stolen coins, cloth, sugar, tobacco, or whatever else the unlucky target ship happened to be carrying. And yes, this means not every raid ended with a chest full of gold. Sometimes the treasure was barrels of flour, sometimes it was rope, sometimes it was a cargo hold full of goods that made everyone say, "Great, we risked death for bulk textiles." That's another thing movies skip. Pirates needed supply chains. A pirate ship wasn't just hunting treasure. It constantly needed food, fresh water, ammunition, spare sails, medicine, wood, and places to repair damage. You can't run a criminal enterprise if your ship's mast snaps and your entire logistics plan is hope. So pirates stole supplies, traded with shady merchants, pressured coastal settlements, or looked for friendly ports where officials were willing to look the other way. Every pirate crew needed a network. A startup needs funding and vendors. Pirates needed powder, biscuits, and someone willing to buy stolen cargo without asking too many questions. Now let's talk about product launches. For pirates, a raid was basically the big business meeting. The crew spots a merchant ship. They chase it. Maybe they raise a false flag to get close. Maybe they fire a warning shot. And ideally, the target surrenders without a full battle, because battles are expensive. Cannonballs cost money, repairs take time. Injured workers are bad for morale. Dead workers are even worse for morale. This is where pirate branding mattered. A terrifying reputation could be useful. If other ships believed your crew was ruthless, they might surrender faster. That saved time, saved supplies, and reduced risk. The black flag was not just spooky decoration. It was marketing, not good marketing. More like, our brand promise is that your afternoon is about to become horrible. But branding cuts both ways. The more famous and frightening a pirate became, the more attention they attracted. Wanted posters, government proclamations, merchant complaints. That was bad PR. And eventually, the real regulators showed up. By regulators, of course, I mean the Navy. And the Navy's enforcement strategy was not a polite letter asking pirates to update their compliance policy. It was warships, trials, prison, and public hanging. This is the part where the fun pirate startup metaphor crashes into reality. Pirate life was brutal. Ships were filthy. Disease spread easily. Food spoiled. Fresh water went bad. Storms could erase you. Fights could maim you. Capture could mean death. Even if you got rich, you had to somehow spend the money without being arrested, betrayed, or recognized by every authority with a rope and a grudge. And the workplace culture? Let's not romanticize it. Pirates could be cruel, violent, and terrifying to the people they attacked. They were criminals operating in a world where life was already harsh, and they made it harsher for many others. Their internal rules did not make them good guys. It just made them organized bad guys. Still, compared with the miserable conditions many sailors faced on legal ships, piracy could look like a terrible but tempting career pivot. You're underpaid. Your boss is awful. You have no voice. Then a pirate crew says, "Join us, vote on leadership, get a share of profits, and maybe retire before the government kills you." That is not a good deal. But in that world, for some sailors, it was a deal they could understand. The whole operation depended on a fragile balance. Keep the crew motivated, keep supplies moving, keep targets scared, keep the ship repaired, and stay ahead of the law. The captain had to lead without becoming hated. The quartermaster had to keep the crew from tearing itself apart. Everyone had to agree that the next raid was worth the risk. And like many startups, most pirate ventures did not last long. The business model had a tiny flaw. Every successful quarter made the world want you dead. So, yes, pirates were floating criminal startups. The captain was the CEO, but one bad quarter could get him voted out. The crew had equity, but the exit strategy was often a noose. The ship had a brand, but the brand attracted heavily armed regulators. The raids generated revenue, but customer satisfaction was extremely low. And if you were that sailor who joined up hoping for freedom, profit, and adventure, you might eventually look around at the leaking deck, the angry crew, the empty water barrels, the Navy on the horizon, and think, I may have joined the worst company in the world. At which point the quartermaster hands you a musket and says, "Good news, we're all hands today."